So I'm going to make an object focusing on contour line and using wire. So I have some flexible kind of moldable wire, and this is the object I'm going to make. It's a simple hand broom. When you're starting out, choose something simple, and I find it really helpful to have a kind of line drawing. I thought mostly about contour, but I added some key details here. All right, so I'm going to straighten out some of my wire. I do like to work off of my spool, but I won't always. And I want to think about like, where am I starting? I usually don't want to start right in the corner, so I'm going to start kind of in the middle and start to shape just the outline of my object here. I do want to check my proportion, which is like size relationship. So how wide is the bottom? And it looks like there's about 2 widths of the bottom for the top, so I'm going to check that here. And for a practice piece, I'm not making it too large. I also don't want it so small that it's really hard to get, move my hands around. So this is like a hand size amount. So I'm going to twist the wire together and use the pliers to hold it in place. And sometimes I'll use the pliers to help straighten a little bit. That being said, it is going to distort as you work. That's the hard thing about wire. And so you might have to establish or recreate angles and straight lines as you need to, kind of occasionally. Now you can work with this one piece of wire, but you might find it gets too cumbersome, and in which case you can always cut it and work with smaller sections. Just think about where you want to start and stop those areas. So I want to really establish this as my kind of correct shape before I really move on. And once I've done that, now I want to think about the initial volume. So I'm going to actually just start with the top up here. Where you start doesn't really matter, or at least it certainly depends on what object you're making. So you can see I'm really going back and forth with just my hands and then the pliers. Partly that's where it's easy to get into, and also what I need to be doing. So I'm checking my work a lot, as you can see here. And then I'm going to continue to add volume, so I'm just adding more and more bits and pieces here, kind of wrapping around to create this top cap area of this hand broom. Sometimes I need 2 pairs of pliers, one to hold and one to twist. I find this especially if I'm in a small area, perhaps, or I have stiffer wire. All right, so I'm just going to kind of keep moving along here, shaping, adjusting, checking my work. All right, so I want to create a lot more volume now. So I've created sort of a parallel shape along the side and bottom. And this is a lot fatter than an actual broom, but it gives me a little more room to work as I am going. So I'm creating this square bottom here. And so sometimes I'll just double up my wire and twist around. That means I don't have to start and stop quite as often. And now I'm going to check my work and see, I need to start to pinch it in on the sides. And now add some key details like that reddish orange sort of like band along the top part. So I find that with working with wire, it's just, there's a lot of kind of back and forth here, checking, adjusting. Now, especially as I'm adding more details, I want to make sure I have things in the right area, because it gets harder to go back and redo something as I've kind of, established the shape a lot more. You can't pinch and shape it in quite the same way as when you're first starting, and there's a lot more kind of flexibility in your overall design. I want to make sure that I've tucked away any of these loose ends so that they're not sticking out. First of all, it doesn't look as neat, but more importantly, it can scratch or poke at you. And so, you want your piece to be both look and feel finished. So sometimes I just kind of pinch and crimp that down with my pliers, and I find that I do it in a few points. So again, checking my work, adjusting again. Like I said, that's kind of the nature of wire, is that you have to go back and forth with it. Considering it's a more flexible wire, it does mean that it does change its shape as you're working with it. So now I'm just continuing to add these key details like these stripes in the middle, adjusting that, pinching that, thinking about the top a little more, maybe adding a little more wire. All right, so then I'm just checking and I can see, maybe I want to add kind of some crimping along the bottom. Even though this broom itself is fairly flat, it might give it a little more kind of visual character and keep it from looking too much like just perhaps a water bottle. All right, and then I do want to imply those lines of the broom bristles, so I'm going to just add some wire into here. I'm not going to add as many. I could if I wanted a really dense piece, but I kind of like the idea of something fairly open, right, so I can see through it. That's more of a preference, as well as, of course, how much wire you have. And then I feel like I need a little bit more kind of density near the top to show that difference in material up there with the wire cap at the top. And now I need to tidy up those wire ends. So like I said, you need to make sure that they aren't sticking out, both for visual and safety reasons. So I'm crimping them down along the side of the wire, or even just tucking them under. All right, and so that is pretty much my contour line hand broom made out of wire. Make sure any small pieces get thrown away. You don't want those to get left anywhere.